4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon, everyone. This virtual meeting is compliant with the Ralph M. Brown Act as amended by California Assembly Bill number 361, effective September 16th, 2021, providing for a public health emergency exception to the standard teleconference rules required by the Brown Act. The purpose of this is to provide a safe environment for the public, staff, and the planning commissioners while allowing for public participation. The Planning Commission meeting is being broadcast on Comcast Channel 27 and the city's YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/BrisbaneCA. The agenda materials may be viewed online at www.brisbaneca.org/meetings. All written comments submitted before 2 p.m. of the day of the meeting have already been provided to the commission and available for public inspection at the front lobby in City Hall and online at www.brisbaneca.org/meetings. Any writings received after the agenda had been posted, but after 2 p.m. of the day of the meeting will be available online at the start of the meeting at www.brisbaneca.org/meetings, at which time the materials will be distributed to the commission. For those who did not provide written comments, a call-in telephone number was provided on the agenda, which can be viewed online at www.brisbaneca.org/meetings. The phone number and instructions will also be provided during the meeting. Participants in the Zoom webinar may make their comments through Zoom. Please note that Zoom participants will only be able to address the commission verbally. I will announce time limits for public comment during the particular item. Staff, may we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Funke?
Aye.
Commissioner Gooding?
Aye.
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Commissioner Sayasane?
Here.
Let the record show Commissioner Lau is absent.
This time I would ask for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. I'll make a motion.
Staff, may we conduct a voice vote?
Did we get a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Funke?
Aye.
Commissioner Gooding?
Aye.
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Commissioner Sayasane?
Aye.
The motion passes with 4 ayes. At this time, we will entertain any members of the public or the commissioners that would like to pull an item from the consent calendar. Staff will post the text and call number on the screen. If you are participating by Zoom and you want to pull an item from the consent calendar, please raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button or by pressing *9 on your phone if you have called in. Staff will start a timer for 30 seconds for members of the public to ask to pull an item. While we are waiting for the time to pass, do any of the commissioners, would they like to remove an item from the consent calendar?
No.
10 more seconds. All right, 30 seconds has elapsed and no one has raised their hand.
Thank you. At this time, is there a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
I will so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Staff, may we please have a voice count?
Commissioner Funke?
Aye.
Commissioner Gooding?
Aye.
Commissioner Patel?
Aye.
Commissioner Sayasane?
Aye.
The motion passes with 4 ayes. Moving on to oral communications. Oral comments on items not on the agenda can be called in by calling the teleconference number in the next 1 minute or made by participants in the Zoom webinar. Staff will display the call-in number on the screen, and any Zoom meeting participants should raise their hand to indicate to staff that they would like to address the commission on items not on the agenda. Callers must press *9 to raise their hand. Staff will set a timer for 1 minute. I don't believe we've received any written communications for this particular meeting.
That's correct. $15 more seconds. All right, 1 minute has elapsed and no one has raised their hand.
Thank you. There is no old business or new business on this agenda for today. So at this time, I would move on to the workshop and ask staff for the presentation on the overview and discussion of new state housing laws.
Absolutely. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Let me pull up my presentation. Okay, great. So tonight we're going to explore some new state housing laws that are either already effective or coming online shortly in 2023 that will impact our zoning regulations. So as the Commission is very familiar with, in the past several years, the state has advanced many laws that impact our local control and discretion over residential projects. I think we've probably felt most keenly the changes to how we regulate accessory dwelling units, as well as residential design review procedures. Earlier this year, we just went through the objective development standards process. So tonight, we're going to focus on these 5 laws put up on the screen here: SB9, which is in effect currently, SB478, which is also in effect, and then prospectively 2 statutes that just passed and will be effective in July, for which staff is going to be bringing some ordinances forward to Commission. SB9, just as a broader overview, it allows lot splits in single-family zones to be proposed and processed ministerially without any discretionary action. And it allows those lot splits to occur where minimum lot sizes are not being met, for example. It also would allow duplexes on single-family zoned lots, again, ministerially. I provided an attachment to the memo that we can dive through a little bit. It has some really helpful imagery. So I'm going to stop this and pull up that. So this was attached to the memo. This was prepared by ABAG. So basically, SB9, the end result, if a property owner wanted to invoke all of the provisions of SB9, is that 4 units could be established where previously there was only, we say 1, but really anyone can have an ADU, so let's just say 2. So the primary, I think, part of SB9 that is interesting and that we're going to discuss a little bit later tonight is, again, this ability to split a lot without resulting in lots that conform to our minimum lot size requirements. In the R1 district, the minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet. Our other single family zoning district, the RBA, has a 20,000 square foot lot size minimum. There are many reasons why this SB9 is not going to be as broadly applicable in the RBA. And we can go into those in more detail. So we're really, I think, just focusing on the R1. So as you can see here, there's some different scenarios kind of illustrated of if someone were to invoke SB9, what development scenarios could result. So again, this kind of ultimate scenario is you have one lot that is split into two and then developed with two units each, so resulting in 4 units on the lot that used to be just single family. There are a lot of qualifications and eligibility criteria for SB9, both for the lot split provisions and the duplex provisions. For the lot split, the legislature wanted to make sure it wasn't used speculatively. So, like, for example, a property owner may only split one lot, one time. They are not eligible for lot splits on other adjacent properties. So it would not allow a property owner to sidestep our regular subdivision regulations. This really was intended to just be for kind of a one-time only. There's also a 3-year residency requirement. So if someone pursued a lot split, they would have to agree to reside on one of the lots for at least 3 years. So really, this is kind of leading into the state's attempt to encourage and make it easier for infill development to occur in established neighborhoods. The city can also still require many of our regular subdivision requirements. We have to allow, let me actually jump back to our, stop this one. We do have to allow a certain minimum size of units. Oops, sorry. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk with you guys about tonight. There's a little bit of discretion that the city may be able to have in that. Okay, so if a property owner pursues a lot split under SB9, the city does have some discretion on limiting the size of the unit. We could not prohibit units, or we'd have to allow at least 800 square feet for these units on the new small lots for new construction. We would also be allowed to require at least 4-foot side and rear setbacks, and we'd also be able to require 1 parking space per unit. So in thinking of adopting an ordinance to implement SB9, we wanted to check in and see if there is any interest in kind of studying further whether the city would want to allow units larger than 800 square feet on newly subdivided lots. So when it comes to the actual size of the lots, there is requirement in the law to subdivide basically proportionally, and there's a minimum lot size of at least 1,200 square feet. In Brisbane, we do have many lots that are under 5,000 square feet. Our original subdivision, as we kind of talked about during the housing element, the original subdivision map for the city had 2,500 square foot lots were not uncommon. And the city already has some allowance in the zoning ordinance for substandard lots to be developed with single family homes, not duplexes. So we kind of wanted to just test the waters and see if the commission was interested in studying whether, potentially larger unit sizes could be allowed. One of the things I think staff identified, at least I think in the memo and that we're talking about tonight, is whether ties to increased provision of more parking might be a feasible way to accommodate potentially more square footage. So at this point, I'll kind of open it up to the commission and see if there's any interest in this. There's some already, we had talked about during the housing element process, studying through program 2A5, studying zoning districts where maybe overall reductions to minimum lot sizes, rather than someone invoking through SB9 a lot split provision to have a smaller lot size, that we would actually study reductions to the lot size in the zoning districts standards themselves. So there is like a lot of synergy there and relationship there in what we're asking you guys to think about tonight. And I kind of set it up in the staff memo. We can think about this. We can adopt an ordinance that kind of just implements SB9 as is without really pushing the limit, and fold that kind of study into our future study that we've committed to in our housing element program. That's totally feasible. But if the commission was potentially interested in adopting an ordinance sooner, or through our SB9 implementing ordinance, that's something we could advance a little bit as well. So I'll stop there and see if there are any thoughts on this. Kamala?
Yeah, okay, so what you're saying is that a lot has to be, if they split it, has to be at least 800 square foot, or the unit.
No.
The unit
Yeah.
has to be 800 square. So, and we can require one parking space for that. So, but
Per
you're saying
unit.
if we allow the square footage to be larger, we can make require more parking, that they have to provide for more parking?
I think that we have the ability to do that in the law. Basically, like, in my mind, if we were interested in pursuing something like that, we would have kind of one track that's like the SB9 track, no more than 800 square foot per new unit with one parking space per unit, and then having a second track that is kind of a Brisbane, a special allowance that we would create through an ordinance that would say, well, you could have a larger unit. You would have to provide more parking, for example, or whatever other standards we would want to tag to that.
Yeah, I would be open to that, to give people the flexibility, and if they want a larger unit, to provide more parking. So I don't see how that, hurts.
Okay. How's everyone else feeling? Oh, sorry, everyone has their hands up. I don't know who went first.
I think Commissioner Gooding.
Yeah, thank you. I note here in the PowerPoint slide for this, it says max one parking place per unit on new lots, and I don't know if that's a literal pasting in
Per unit, yeah.
Of the statute, and I confess I have not gone and parsed the statute out, but I would be concerned if we allowed larger units than 800 square feet without having the capacity or the ability to require more than one parking place. Because what SB9 does to us really is severely increase the potential density of a neighborhood. And in some places in California, in some places in San Mateo County, but footprint is not a problem and space is not as big an issue. But in downtown Brisbane, it really is. And so I would be interested in resolving, at least either through the statutory language or advice of counsel, whether we can require more parking. I think we should. If we really allow larger units without having to provide parking spaces, we're just throwing cars on streets that are already completely clogged, and I think that's not good.
Yeah, and we wouldn't, and I don't know that we would recommend, it's like kind of same page, Commissioner Gooding, like 800 square foot units. Our code, so the parking code says for single family homes and multifamily, I believe, if you are a one bedroom that's no more than 900 square feet in floor area, your parking requirement is one parking space. So that's a little bit larger than 800 square feet, obviously not much, but yeah, certainly anything over 900 square feet would be totally out of line with our current parking code.
And if we can't require more than one parking space because the statute doesn't let us, then my take would be, let's not allow units larger than 800 because they are much more likely to create households that have more than one car.
Yeah. Okay. Chair Patel.
I was wondering, is there, how we talked about previously, how there's like a % coverage of a lot. So a house can only be so big because, so if a lot is split and I guess the minimum is 1,200 square feet, is that right, for a lot under this provision? Would that still apply, or do we have to get rid of that because it would not allow for, if it doesn't allow for the split to include a house on it or a unit on it, would we have to get rid of that law?
It wouldn't get rid of our law necessarily, but it would, we are precluded from applying any development standard that would not allow, in the case of new construction, an 800 square foot unit of at least 800 square feet. So,
Okay.
and it really depends too, like if it's a lot with an existing house on it, for example, say you have a 5,000 square foot lot with a house on it and the property owner wants to split the property and they draw the property line such that approximately, at least 40% of the lot is now going to be a new lot. We're already looking at then a situation where you're creating a non-conforming situation, right? Because that existing house is now on a much smaller property.
Can you do that? Would that be allowed under SB9?
Yes, that would be allowed. Existing structures are allowed, regardless of whether, all of a sudden now they're non-conforming in regards to floor area or lot coverage because of a reduction of their lot size.
Well, I think that the Brisbane law should take that into consideration.
In terms of,
well, if there's going to be two different tracks, there's going to be the SB9 track, then if we are also going to be studying, because I think Commissioner Sayasane had talked about also studying a parallel track that would just be Brisbane specific. I think we should consider maybe deviating from the SB9 so that we can preserve some of those qualities.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes
And
sense.
the quality you're talking about is existing structures on lots small 1,200. Is that right? Because they're non-conforming. Is that the deal?
No, I think what we were talking about, sorry, were you asking me or were you asking Julia?
I was asking you, Chair Patel, actually, what is it that we're trying to hold on to?
Oh, so if we have a house that is on a 2,500 square foot lot and is currently conforming to the ratio of like property to land. So, you can only have a house at a certain amount of size based on your lot size. If they split that in half, they can make the entire house one lot. Let's say let's say it's the square footage is 1,200 square feet. They can make that entire lot their house and then split off the back. And then we would have to allow at least an 800 square foot house on the back under SB9. But the first house that was already there would be non-conforming under Brisbane law, but we still have to allow it.
I understand. So that they would be compliant with the 1,200 square foot lot, but their coverage would be more than is allowed. Okay.
Right.
All right. And is that the basic thing? Is my general question up front was, so the basic lot size is 5,000. You can split it into 4, I guess. But if you have a smaller, let's say like the example you were raising,
You can only split it one time. Whether your lot is 5,000, 3,000, or 2,000 square feet in size, only one time.
And what if it changes hands? Because that was another question I had.
What are the changes? Excuse me, say that one more time.
Changes hands, so it's like one owner.
So once a lot has been split under this provision, there are no future splits. So that's one of the criteria: is was this lot created as a result of an urban lot split?
Is that something we might want to change? I mean, I'm just thinking on my feet here. That sounds almost a little bit unreasonable. Like if there's still room to split, like a 5,000 square foot lot is split into 2 times 2,500 and they're sold. why wouldn't you be able to split those lots under SB9? Now they have new owners.
So
You know,
it's just one
still
of the
be conforming.
provisions. It's one of the provisions of the statute. And I think it was intended to prevent like serial subdivisions that flout city standards. It was intended to be a one-time situation.
Huh, okay. Well, I mean, that's fine to me. It just doesn't seem entirely logical to me. It's like, because the intent, like whether you split it up front into 4, but if someone didn't have the foresight to do that, then they basically hand that down to future owners in perpetuity. It's like, I'm sorry, I only did it once.
You can't split it 4 times the first time. You can only split one lot into 2.
Yeah.
Oh,
So the 1,200
pretty-
square foot is it's basically saying the smallest lot that could be split is 2,400 square feet. That's really what that 1,200 square foot minimum is saying.
okay.
Is if you own a lot that's less than 2,400 square feet, you can't do a lot split.
Gotcha.
It doesn't mean that now we're allowing 1,200 square foot lots just across the board.
I see. All right. That was a good clarification.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's I probably didn't do the best job explaining it tonight, so I would recommend that take a closer look at the attachment to the staff memo. There's a really that graphic that we briefly touched on is really good at explaining all the kind of exclusions and stuff too. I didn't spend a lot of time on.
And
Okay.
Sorry.
No, go on.
There was only one other thought that crossed my mind. I think it's probably beyond the purview of the Planning Commission. Is like, I think probably the only thing that you can put in a statute is the number of parking spaces, like some kind of ratio, you know. But I think maybe the larger issue is the number of cars that are owned by the people living in the thing. I mean, you can still have someone living in an 800 square foot property, but having 3 cars. But I know that's probably falls under the purview of another commission, not the Planning Commission, right?
The Car Ownership Commission.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, we have a parking, isn't there someone? Isn't
Complete
there a
Streets.
Yeah.
Complete
so-
Streets is studying parking management right
permit.
now.
Yeah, parking permit system for
Yeah.
streets.
It should cost you if you want to own 3 cars and you're living in a 800 foot apartment. But anyway, that's an issue. But thanks for clarifying the lot splitting requirement.
No problem. So I think I have a pretty clear then indication. It seems like we're interested in exploring potentially allowing larger units on these lots, with the caveat that definitely we would need more parking to be required, and looking at the potential for non-conforming conditions being created. Okay, I think I got it. Let me. Okay, jumping to SB478. This is already in effect, and this is a more just prescriptive law that we're just going to have to amend our standards to conform to. So this applies to multifamily developments of 3 to 10 units, and it basically increases the allowable FAR, floor area ratio, for such units, either 1.0 or 1.25. And the staff memo kind of explained FAR and gave you some examples of what FARs would look like on different size lots in different districts. So it also prohibits us from applying minimum lot size requirements to multifamily dwellings where they're otherwise permitted. So taken together, this could potentially in our R2 and R3 districts result in potentially encouraging some more development. We don't really see them as moving the needle like super far, because there are still challenges to developing housing, and we can still apply parking, which is always kind of what determines the allowable unit size or number of units. And we can apply objective standards, which we've already adopted. So we would be bringing forward an ordinance in 2023 where that would amend the maximum FAR just for that particular number of units in the R2, R3, NCR02, and SCR01 districts. The current standards for FAR would remain exactly the same for any size of development outside of that range. So unless there's any questions on that, this isn't really much of a discussion item. Did anyone have any questions on this one? All right. Okay, so here are the exciting new laws. AB 2011 and SB6, they were just signed this fall, and they actually don't go into effect until July of 2023, which is not typical. So we have a bit more time to digest them. But basically, these two laws would allow a property owner to propose a residential development in commercial districts. Based on the various requirements in the statute, we're really looking at impacts in the NCRO districts, the neighborhood commercial. So that's Brisbane Village and downtown Brisbane, and Sierra Point districts. So there are differences between the two laws. AB 2011 projects must provide affordable housing in different amounts. It would be a ministerially reviewed project and exempt from CEQA. SB6 projects don't have the same affordable housing requirements in the statute. They would be subject to typical review procedures, although of course there's other streamlining statutes that they could invoke in their application. So the real sticking point for these laws is that there are pretty strict prevailing wage requirements. So in order for a project to be eligible, they have to commit to paying prevailing wage and using skilled labor. Any project that would be invoked under these statutes would have to conform with objective design standards. And we have design standards like that we adopted earlier this year. So we anticipate bringing forward an ordinance to implement this that would potentially tweak, if necessary, the objective design standards we've already adopted. And we would have to study separately objective design standards for the NCRO district. The council did opt to not include the NCRO district in the odds process this spring, intending to do a more special study of that neighborhood. So it is very timely with these laws coming down the pike in July of next year for us to do just that. So in January of next year, we're probably going to have a work plan that we would be ready to share with you all January or February on adopting objective standards for the NCRO district. And then with an eye also to Sierra Point if we need to tweak those at all, anticipating that potentially someone may submit an application under these. So I also attached to the staff memo a handout from ABAG that really details the requirements, eligibility, and differences between these two state statutes. So I think that's a really good resource. It explains it really clearly. If there's any questions on this, I'm happy to try to answer them, but we are going to have a pretty extensive work program on this, so it won't be the last time we talk about it.
Maybe just a naive question. We talked about NCRO. I'm just wondering about Sierra Point, right? Those were the two. And what about like Crocker Park? It's a different zone. I'm sorry, I should probably know that.
Good question.
Fall under that. So
industrial land is not eligible, and warehousing is included in that definition of industrial. So that knocks out Crocker Park.
Okay, and Sierra Point currently is all the biotech for the most part. So
office and retail, which are the land uses that would be potentially open to this. But at Sierra Point, we obviously have a lot of new development, very expensive development going in right now. There's not a ton of and the sites that are already developed are occupied. I don't see, even though Sierra Point technically meets a property owner could apply, I think we would be very surprised if that was the case. Just due to the occupancy and building activity already related to biotech out there.
Thank you.
And another thing that ties into this, the City Council added a program to our draft housing element. It's program 2A7 that commits us to studying zoning amendments to existing commercial zoning districts at Sierra Point and Crocker Park. So this would capture Crocker Park to either allow or require mixed use development. So again, we kind of have already in motion some consideration of the same types of proposals that are envisioned in these statutes. And we'll be devoting future study to them. So again, 2023 is going to be quite the year for us. We're going to be amending the zoning ordinance, bringing forward, probably additional workshops and study sessions to you all with an eye to spring and summer of 2023. Certainly, we'd love to get the AB2011 and SB6 stuff ironed out before July when it's effective, but we'll see how that goes. And at this point, I'll stop my share. And if there's any remaining kind of questions or conversation that you'd like, please let me know. Otherwise, we can move on. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Julia, for the presentation. Moving on to items initiated by staff. I believe that there is an item initiated by staff.
That's correct. We have an informational memo attached to the agenda. It's regarding the 2022 California Building Code. They're on a 3-year cycle, so that the 2022 codes are going to be in effect on January 1, 2023. So we need to amend Title 15 of the Brisbane Municipal Code. Title 15 is not something that the Planning Commission will review prior to the City Council, but the City Council will, and that is scheduled to go next week. There are some minor changes made beyond just amending it to adopt the new 2022 building code. There's some reach codes that we are either readopting or eliminating because the California Building Code is the latest one supersedes it. So the 3 main ones that are related to energy use would be on-site energy generation. That's our requirement, our reach code, former reach code, to require solar panels on residential and non-residential development. That was put into effect prior to this, the new code, building code, which now requires it, so it's no longer needed. That will be repealed. We have one for EV charging infrastructure. We are retaining that one, readopting it. There's no need to change it. It's very effective, and it still requires a greater standard than what the building code would. And then the last one, we do have a reach code for building electrification. That's all new, new construction. Buildings need to be all electric. We're going to readopt that reach code. We're just going to amend a different part of the California Building Code. Rather than amending the energy code, we're going to amend Cal Green. It's a little bit easier adoption process, but the standards are going to be largely the same. The only difference is we're eliminating some blanket exceptions for residences, which allow some gas appliances and fireplaces, and the blanket exception for life science. The only exception that really remains would be you would have to explain why you can't feasibly be all electric otherwise, or excuse me, to be allowed to have a gas infrastructure. And even if you were to get that exception, you would still have to basically pre-wire the building, make sure you have adequate space for electrification in the future. And that would be that'd be it mostly for the amendments proposed for this latest building code cycle.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Are there any items that were initiated by the commission, or would any
Chair
questions?
Patel?
Yes.
Chair Patel, I do have a couple other items that weren't on the agenda, but I just wanted to remind the commission.
Okay.
One is, and I don't recall if last time we met, whether or not the council had considered the housing element, the draft. They did, as Julia mentioned, they did make some minor modifications. It has been submitted to HCD for review. We expect to get the review completed early January, their HCD's deadline to respond. There are some unique procedural wrinkles that will necessitate us adopting the housing element in January. So we're going to go straight to the council with that once we have HCD's comments. So anyway, that's a little bit different than we had originally envisioned. We thought we had about 3 to 4 more months of a grace period, but the state indicates we don't have a grace period to adopt that. So that will be accelerated. A couple other things. One is I believe the city clerk reached out to you about ethics training. You have an obligation as commissioners to attend, I think it's biannually. So if you haven't heard from the city clerk, you might want to reach out to her. They're scheduling it for December 1st, Thursday night, I believe. That would be joint with the city council. And I think Park and Rec Commission is the other commission that's obligated to do that as well. Couple other things. Next Wednesday night, the 16th, is the mayor's State of the City talk. That'll be at City Hall, and I'm sure it'll be televised as well. I believe it's at 5 or 6 p.m. next Wednesday. And lastly, I want to let the commission know that the city council initiated a code amendment to modify some of the animal testing regulations at Sierra Point, which will require a zoning code amendment. So we'll be moving that forward. You'll be seeing that possibly as early as next month or early in the year next year. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And that's all I had. If you have any questions on those, let me know.
I just wanted to follow up on what John said about the ethics training. I actually did mine yesterday online. Ingrid sent me a link. So if you can't make the December 1st ethics training, you can do it solo online really easy.
Was it fun? In the thing that went out, it said it was very energetic, and which has not been my experience with ethics training, but maybe this one's really good.
Well, no, maybe it'd be more fun in a group setting, but I have plans on December 1st, so that's why I asked Ingrid if I could do something online. It was easy. I got it out of the way. So you're in the same situation, you can do that too.
Yeah, well, that's great. Thank you. That's a good. That's good advice.
All right. Are there any items initiated by the commission? I don't see any items. So at this time, for the adjournment, there will be a cancellation of the regular meeting of November 24th, 2022. And we will adjourn until our regular meeting of December 8th, 2022. See everyone next month.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good night,
everybody.
all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Julia.
Next month.
Thank you.
Good
Good night.
night.
Thanks,
Good night,
everybody.
all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Julia.